let's talk about curriculum. So curriculum is the big question people have, especially when they're just thinking about homeschooling, is what do I do with my kids and how do I decide what to use and where do I find it? So let's talk about curriculum. So first of all, Dawn, what is curriculum?
It is the plan, sequence, and instruction and the resources that you're going to use for it.
So do you always have to buy a curriculum?
No, you can make your own curriculum. You can use no curriculum at all, with some learning types. But people like me, who has to have everything in like an Excel spreadsheet planned out for the year, go a little crazy with that. But there's a million different things that you can do for curriculum.
Okay, so let's just talk about some of that. What are some of the things that people need to think about when they're thinking about curriculum?
Well, first of all, like learning styles that you were talking about just a few minutes ago. The learning style of your kids is going to make a huge difference in what you end up getting and what is going to be a good product for you. Your homeschool style, whether you are going to be homeschooling as a family, are you trying to do, if you've got 8 kids and you've got one room, then you may want to, join some of those together for history lessons or whatever, instead of buying an individual packet for each grade level, things like that have to be considered. Whether you have an idea of maybe doing a co-op, that's something that you would want to consider before you pick your curriculum, because some are going to work better for groups and things like that than
so
others.
Let's define the term co-op for those who might not know what we're talking about.
Okay, so I have several friends who have kids my daughter's age, and we did this with the boys as well. We get together and we say, hey, we are doing physical science this year and we need that lab component, and it would just be really great if we could do it all together, and one of us teaches every other week and we do the experiments together. The girls will get together. It's just fun. And I have done that for many, many years with all of my kids. And it's that is the thing that has produced the lifelong friendships for my kids. Mm-hmm. They have really enjoyed that and kept up with all of those people.
Yeah. And co-ops can be 2 families getting together to do a subject together. It could be many, many families, and where you actually rent out a facility or some place to meet and have a whole day worth of classes together. Again, right now we're not sure how much of that's going to be able to go on this fall with COVID restrictions still in place, but hopefully things will be opening up enough. But those are things that people just have to search out in their area, right? Among their homeschool communities. If there are existing groups that you can join up, or like you've done, like I've done, is just putting out the same thing. I did the same thing, just put a note out on our Facebook group saying, we want to do biology this year. Would anybody like to do it with us? And we're going to meet once a week for 2 hours to do.
I have younger kids, and so within our Lighthouse, our homeschool group, there's 10 of us moms that have our kids are similar ages, and so we've kind of grouped together, and we wanted to foster good, long-lasting friendships with them and for us. So we call it Connections, and we meet twice a month, but it's purely for enrichment. So whereas you're talking like a specific subject, or you might join a co-op that offers different classes that you might help teach. This we did more with just unit study approach in mind, even field trips. Like we meet twice a month. One's in a classroom setting, one's out doing something else. So it just gives you the joy of learning together. So
yeah, that is very good. The how you're going to homeschool within your family makes a big difference on which curriculums you're going to pick. Price, unfortunately, is always going to be there if you've got quite a few kids and you have quite a bit of things, and sometimes that can make a big difference, and you may want to go a different direction just based on finances.
There are free curriculums available
Like Easy Peasy, I know is one.
There are a
Homeschool
few
Share.
that are
Both
free
websites.
online. There's
Yeah.
free curriculum, there's low cost curriculum, there's medium cost, there's high cost. There's
Yeah.
also places like consignment stores, the Homeschool Gathering place that has consignment where you can buy used curriculum and buy it from someone who's used it and is ready to move to something else. So
And a lot of the curriculum also, which you may, consider within your own family, is whether you can reuse it for the next kid, So
Yes.
if it's a $50 book and that's kind of high for you right now, but you've got, 3 more kids that can use that same book, then, then that's a good deal. So, unfortunately, that is one of the things we have to consider. The goal for the homeschool itself, I don't know if we, in the previous videos, got much into the goals, but I do think it's important for your homeschool to have a goal. What do you want your kids to come out with when it's all over? A foundation of, like in ours was, a foundation of their Christian beliefs, and then a foundation of their family's love and connectivity. And, everything else kind of went on the top of that, but they always had that base, and that was a big goal for us. That and, that we always work around our schedule so that we can be together for things. So, the curriculum you use would have to meet the goal that you're starting with. Is it going to be an all-inclusive or piecemeal like you were talking about, the eclectic, or just one great big package that has everything for 5th grade in it? There's so many different things to choose from. And then, honestly, I would like taking my kids in, and just looking at books, places, and then just saying to them, which of these looks the funnest to you? Like in this kind of book, you would be doing this, and in this kind of book, you would be doing this. If I know that I can teach from it, which one is the funnest to them? And I think that's very important to get them on board and let them be part of it.
I think that's really good advice. We struggled some this past year with the math curriculum, and we couldn't decide if it was our attitude or if it was the book that was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did a pre-test for a couple of different curriculums to see would it be a better fit for the learning style, or would it bring a little more peace to our home. And we decided to stick with what we had because there wasn't anything better, but there are options that you can explore and decide if it's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
well, and that's one of the things with curriculum to remember is that it's always a tool.
Right.
But your
Yes.
curriculum isn't your master.
Right.
So if it's not working well for you and you don't find something else that works better, you can still keep that curriculum and change it
You can
so
tweak
that it works better.
Mhm.
And it might be that you're maybe cutting out some of the extra stuff that's just busy work, or it might be that you have to add an element to it that, is more to let your child move or express themselves differently, but you can still use that as your base of what you're teaching from.
Right. You may have to add things to challenge them, or, if they're not as good in grammar, maybe you bring it down a notch for them. But
And it's
That
okay
is
to
one
go
of the-
slower and stretch out, maybe it's taking one lesson and making it last 2 weeks instead of one, stretching things out is okay too. And if you don't finish it by the end of the year, you still have,
Carries over.
just carry it over until
Yeah.
you're ready to move on. So
Yeah, and the thing that you have written, Beth, you said it's a roadmap. You set pace, expectations. You can add lessons, skip lessons, supplement, etc., which is what you were just saying. But I like that, and I think that is important for anybody to understand, because it's so easy to get caught up in the, oh my gosh, I have to do this today, and this today, and this today, and this today. And really, if your kid loves this that you're doing on Monday, it's okay to spread it out.
yeah.
It's okay to do a little less of this and really let them get into this thing that they love so much.
It doesn't have to be just boxes that you're checking off to get it
Mm-mm.
done, right? And if you use the parts that make sense for what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of curriculums are written with a lot of extra added on in case you want to do that, but you don't have to do everything just because it's written down in the book.
I was going to talk about accreditation. Well, it's defined as the formal method of proof that established standards have been met. So in North Carolina, and I believe across the nation, I don't know that there are any states, you can correct me on that, or you, I don't believe there's any states that require accreditation for homeschoolers, that they use accredited curriculums.
No.
But basically, as a homeschooler, we have the ability to choose what our kids are going to study. You know, like we've talked about, there's so many different avenues and ways of studying and things. We do not have to teach fractions in 4th grade. We can teach fractions in 5th grade. Or our kid who is really, you know, mathematically inclined might have taken fractions in 3rd grade. So we're not always on the same level as the, you know, public school standards would be. So as a homeschooler, I have found a lot of homeschoolers really just don't see any value in that. We see a value in what our kids are learning and that they're meeting our standards, but not necessarily the state standards. Otherwise, we would be putting them in the state schools.
If it's something that you know this is only a temporary thing and you're putting a child back into a public school, following an accredited curriculum is probably going to be likely to line up with a public school curriculum. So if that's important to you, that your curriculum be as similar to a public school curriculum as you can get, then looking at something, and an accredited curriculum just means that it's coming from an accredited school that has created that curriculum, because curriculums by themselves can't be accredited, but the school that produces it is what gets accredited. So there are programs where you can get curriculum from like Liberty University or Oak Meadow School or these different places that provide curriculums that have been accredited as part of their process of accrediting their school. And for somebody who, again, wants that assurance that they're doing something close to a public school curriculum,
you can always compare scope and sequence for your local school to the scope and sequence of an accredited, likely online school that you're looking into to see, you know, how they would measure if that might be a good fit for a year. So.
Which is what, you know, when I pulled my boys out, I was planning to homeschool them for the rest of that year. They went through the first quarter. And then they were going back to school. And so I did keep everything very much along the lines of where they were going to need to go back into, so that they would consider, you know, that they had finished that grade and were ready for the next grade. And then we ended up, you know, homeschooling the next year, and I did the same thing, just very rigid, you know, public schooling at home kind of thing. It wasn't until the next year that we decided, you know what, we're doing this forever, and we're going to have fun, and that was the best year of homeschooling ever. So, yeah.
I think it is important, and maybe you can speak to this, Beth, to note that you don't have to measure what you're doing with your own goals and scope at home to what scope and sequence would be for public school, because it's not going to look the same.
It's not.
And if something happens in your home or your family and you need to eventually enroll your kids into school, there is often a big fear that if you've homeschooled, your kids will be behind the grade level they're expected to be performing in. So how would you answer that?
You know, and again, when you go to put your children, if you were going to re-enroll your children after being homeschooled back into public school, each principal decides on the placement, and that doesn't matter. That's true no matter what curriculum you use, no matter what testing you bring. It's up to each individual principal how they place kids. So they might have you take a placement test. They might just look at your you know, what you've done, your list, your transcript, whatever, list of what you say they've done, and say fine. But they might most typically kids are placed by their age, regardless of what skills they've accomplished. And then once they're in school, if they need, remediation anywhere, they get remedial help. If they're accelerated, they might, move them into an advanced group or whatever. I mean, I think that's the most typical thing. Because if you think it's like any transfer from any school or situation. And I happen to work with a refugee community here in Raleigh where kids who are coming here from other countries, some of them haven't been in school for a couple of years or if ever, and they're still just placed into a classroom based on their age. And then they're given whatever support they need. So we're going to have some resources that we're putting up here on the screen. So other than that, just to wrap up with, take time to learn the children's learning styles and your teaching style, and to research and to see some of the different homeschool styles, just to see which ones appeal, because they are going to appeal to different people. As far as how you envision your homeschool looking, and what kind of home life you want to have, because a lot of these really do also create a very specific kind of culture in your home, right?
Very much.
Right. So I think that's all about covers.